Good morning, Jana.
Good morning, Sara. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Here we are. We've been talking about this for ages. And here is our first Wonder Women podcast. How exciting.
Very exciting.
So
Talking about things that people wonder about because
yeah, we are
we
women
need to
who
ask
wonder.
questions.
We wonder about what on earth is going on in the world. So I think not everyone knows who we are. So Jana, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how the hell did you get here and doing what you're doing?
How did I get here? Well, it wasn't my intention. It all came by accident, really. I'm a full-time mom of two small kids, and I thought the world was a very beautiful, innocent place until about 2020. And my eyes opened to things that maybe didn't look right and seem right. And fast forward till about just over a year ago, I started campaigning against things like the erasure of women. I founded the Natural Women's Council, campaigning for women's rights, child protection, and ultimately the family unit. And we've uncovered a lot of really sinister things happening to our kids the last year. Starting with the Blanchardstown Library, actually, was I think last April 2022.
Yeah, what did you I remember that. What did you see? Because this was pretty shocking.
Yeah, this was sort of the start of me realizing how they wanted to sexualize children. I walked into the Blanchardstown Library and there was a big display, and on display there was a photo which we can post after, and it had a man in sex wear with a leather thong and pink fluffy chaps, and another man smoking, and someone with panda eye makeup. And I took a step back and said, that's not child friendly. Not only this against advertising standards, but the half-dressed men in sex wear. So I went to the library to filed a complaint at the counter. They told me to go to Fingal County Council. I filed a complaint, talked to a man, Graham, who said, no, that's our pride display. We are born this way. And I didn't even realize what type of display it was, and neither would my children. Then I went to the Garda station to file inappropriate material in front of children's eyes. That was dismissed. Went to the children's ombudsman. That was dismissed. Everybody dismissed it. Minister for Children. It was all
And we
okay for a
will
child to
we're
see.
gonna put that poster in. I'm gonna put that in as an overlay
Yeah.
once we're done recording. So um that was only a year ago. Can you believe it was only a year ago? So this would have been what, Pride Month, which is what we're about to go into again. A whole month of celebrating, you know, same-sex attraction and
Seems like it's
multiple
360.
sex
Seems like it's
attraction, and
365 days a year.
it's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I know that the Natural Women's Council is something that's just gone from strength to strength, and we're really at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, aren't we? In fact, we literally have what time is it? By midnight tonight that there's the deadline.
Yeah, the government is seeking to cancel just last July 7th, actually, the day I launched the Natural Women's Council, when I was outside Leinster House lobbying against the erasure of women in the Maternity Protection Act. Here we are, just about a year later. The government is seeking to cancel woman and mother from the Irish Constitution, and they're going to do it under the guise of kindness for gender equality. So it came out very quickly. Today at noon is the deadline we've been promoting to get a public consultation into gender equality at equality.gov.ie. So the deadline we've been promoting out to people, this will go to referendum. It will be packaged up like a beautiful little inclusivity, women's rights, children's rights, everybody's rights, and everything. But when you look at the devil's in the detail, you look at the detail, and it's about really erasing biological sex.
Yeah, I think this is the big confusion for most people, is they very cleverly mixed up the whole thing between biological sex and gender, haven't they? So you've got biological sex, which is binary. You've got a very, very tiny percentage of the population who are born intersexed or hermaphrodites. They have both male and female sexual reproductive organs. Okay, you've kind of frozen. I don't know if that's me or you. So my internet's kind of freezing a little bit, but yeah, okay, we'll just keep going the best we can. So yeah, you've got biological sex, which is male and female, and I heard this just described absolutely beautifully by Stella O'Malley, who is the founder of Genspect and the conference that we went to, which we're going to talk about. And she said, you've got biological sex, and then you have male, female, and then you have gender, which is masculine, feminine. And the reality is that you can have a masculine man, and you can have a feminine, boy. Sorry, a masculine woman and a feminine man, and everything in between. So, I mean, if you think about it, you've got every type of person who doesn't necessarily conform to the gender stereotypes. And I totally agree that people need to be allowed to be themselves. If you've got a very feminine man who wants to dress in a very feminine way, that's entirely, his, but he's still a man. He can never be a woman. And women who are very masculine, and obviously, you see, the butch lesbians, and that's what they call themselves, are very masculine and very manly, and but they're still women. That's the whole point, is that we are now denying biological facts, and sort of, as you said, to erase the word woman and women out of and men out of the Constitution is a very, very dangerous slippery slope, because as we've seen men now competing against women in sports, men using women's spaces such as changing rooms and toilets, and it is it's just getting more and more insane. I don't know how you kind of feel about this, but it just seems to be accelerating. As you said, this time last year, no one would have even contemplated that this would be happening.
No, and the children are the victims at the moment. So the way that the government and Department of Education has promoted this in the school curriculum and changing the Constitution, and now the hate speech law, they don't want us to even question it. They've done it under kindness and inclusion and diversity, and they've weaponized the good nature and kindness of Irish people, this bigoted or transphobic, homophobic group of people at all. But that's what they're pushing it under, that there's all this hate crime out there. I've been in Ireland 20 years, and I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't accept a member of a different community. In school, I have this school book as well that Norma Foley just signed in a couple of days ago, In the Dark of Night. She signed this in, so all of the parents who have junior cycle students, which is age 12 to 15, this will be the student book. It's been sent to me by a teacher, and there's a whole section on the gender ideology. And you look at this little kid-friendly picture, without looking at the words, you think, oh, a little gingerbread man, we make these at Christmas. No, it's the genderbread person. And this genderbread person is going to teach age 12 kids that gender identity is about how you see and feel about yourself as male, female, both, or neither, irrespective of the sex you were assigned at birth. So forget about how you were born as a boy or girl.
And I think, this thing of gender assigned at birth, the really interesting thing is that actually goes back to Dr. Money, who in the 50s, he was a pretty horrendous guy by all accounts. So he did that horrible experiment with the twin boys. And actually, he was fascinated by intersex babies who could not be immediately identified as male or female. And so the assigned at birth was for those babies, the intersex babies. It's not that a doctor or a midwife, or a nurse announces to the world, I believe that this is a boy. It's down to the person who first sees that child when they come into the world, that they're assigned their sex. It's like, no, your sex is in every single cell of your body. This is this language. You see, words matter, don't they? Like, words are so important.
And I was speaking with Michael Reed on that absolutely car crash interview he did with me when I challenged him to a debate on LMFM. And I said to him, you cannot change biological sex. He said, you can. I said, no, you actually can't change biological debate. And the analogy I tried to share with him to get the light bulb to go off is, if there were 100 men on an island and their bodies 100 years later rotted, turned to ash and dust, and an archaeologist came and looked at all the bones and cells and DNA, they'd be 100 men, regardless of how they identified. You cannot change sex. So
they couldn't possibly be procreating either.
No, the population would die. But what I can't understand is how anyone can think that teaching a child to believe in something that is not fact is okay to teach in school. And what I don't also agree with, it's very concerning, is if a child disagrees with this and says, no, you can't change sex, or pigs can't fly, or there's no such thing as a tooth fairy. Yes, there is. And they will be penalized, potentially under hate crime, for actually questioning what's not fact. And this page here, this is another page in this book that students will be getting. This page has a very confused looking, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, talking about being
the whole androgynous look.
Yeah, non-binary. It says, I do not identify as being either male or female. Teaching age 12, or this on the top says cisgender. This is a new term. My gender identity is the same as the sex I was assigned at birth. So that means they want you and I to be cis woman. My boy is a cis boy and my girl's a cis girl. I say, knock the cis off that. I'm a woman, not a cis woman. So they're creating an entirely new fictitious fantasy language to teach our children in school this September.
And Jana, I know from lots of conversations we've had in the past, you know, you and I are very similar in the sense that we were tomboys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you wouldn't know that looking at us today on this screen. You know, we have our hair done and some makeup on, and you know, we're wearing reasonably feminine clothes. But the bottom line was, you know, I climbed trees. I had an older brother who I, you know, used to wear his hand-me-down jeans and shoes, and rode bikes and had short hair. You know, at one point, people actually, you know, confused me for being a boy many times. And you know, I didn't want to be a girl. I have to say, growing up, I didn't want to be. You know, I grew up in the Middle East, and women are treated very differently. And I have two brothers, and I was looking at how they were treated and how boys were treated, and I was like, hey, that's not fair. I want equality. I want to be treated equally and fairly. You know, it's about fairness. And I'm so delighted that I was a teenager, you know, in the 80s and not now, because I'm pretty sure that if I was going through that now, I would be adults would be convincing me that I was actually born in the wrong body. And I know you were a tomboy too.
Yeah, I had a whole garage full of quad bikes, three-wheelers, dirt bikes, and I used to race through sand dunes, race across with snow machines in the winter across frozen lakes. I was a bit of a daredevil, but I didn't wear girly clothes. I didn't like Barbie dolls at all. I didn't buy designer clothes. I wore hand-me-downs from my older brother or, you know, cousins, and I was gender non-conforming, but it never would have crossed my mind to say, I'm in the wrong body. I actually want to take puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, remove my breasts and womb. That never would have even been planted in my mind. But if a child goes through school today and it's planted, particularly the statistic that up to 90% of people in Ireland seeking gender services were autistic. So if you have a class of 30 kids,
from the girls, I think that was girls, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're already uncomfortable in their bodies. They already feel like they don't fit in. You know, they suffer from huge anxiety. You know, quite common with any child actually on the autistic spectrum. You know, there are so many issues going on, and yeah, you and I absolutely agree. No child is born in the wrong body. Like, you know, this is, and there are people for whatever reason as adults, and you know, I know somebody personally who went through this in his 50s, who make the decision as adults, having lived a full life, having gone through puberty, having had all their experiences in life, that, you know, they just feel like they don't match, you know, their brain doesn't match their body, essentially. And that's fine.
Yeah.
And we don't have any issue with that. You know, this is about forcing these ideology is by its very definition a set of beliefs and ideas. They're not fact-based, they're not scientifically proven, they're not supported by anything other than just people's feelings. You know, this is what they feel, and they feel this is right, feel it's right for children to have this. But you know what we're not seeing is the terrible detrimental impact of exposing children to these ideologies, are we?
There was a boy, a young boy at the assembly I did there last week outside the Department of Education. That video did go viral with about 500,000 views. It was the one where I was assaulted by a trans right activist who poured an unknown fluid over my head. Luckily, it wasn't acid. It was only water, and it's being handled with the Garda at present as an assault charge. But at that event, there were two young boys that came up to the organizer and they said, thank you for doing this event. They were very distraught. One of the boys was Muslim, and there was a girl in his school transitioning, and he refused to buy into it and said it's against his religion, refused to play the pronoun game and call this girl a boy. He was expelled from school, kicked out of school in Dublin, because as a Muslim boy, he did not agree with this ideology. He has his own religious beliefs, similar to Enoch Burke, the teacher, who was, kicked out of the school as well. If you don't believe in it, you will be punished if you don't believe in this ideology, and that's what's coming in schools.
And look at the Ladies Gaelic Football Association. Allowing men to compete against girls, not just women, but girls. They don't even look like when they're not even. There's not even an attempt to look like a woman. A bald-headed man. Who has been a man his entire life, obviously, because that's what happens when you're born a male. You become a man, regardless of what you do to your body. And the dangers, and we've already seen. There was a hockey team in the UK where a transgendered boy. Trans-identified male, what are they called? Trans-identified males, was playing in a girls hockey team and seriously injured one of the players. I think she had a fractured skull and all kinds of damage. I mean, he's built like a rugby player, playing on these teams. And sports, you would think that, there's so many rules in terms of safeguarding people physically, on the pitch with any kind of sport. And now you're allowing men who are intrinsically, look, men and women are not the same. We're not built equally. We don't have, that's the whole point, is we are, completely different. We've got different bone density, different, think about the hips. Women's hips are wider. We have to be able to give birth. Men's hips are narrower. They actually, and as a result of that, they can run faster. They can do a lot more in terms of that. They've got naturally much, more muscle mass. So,
yeah.
You've already got this is not a belief. This is evidence. And of course, you have some women who are stronger than some men, of course, but we have to look at the general population and we have to take it on that.
Yeah, it's very unfair. Like, I have a 4-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. And from when my son was 2 or 3, he could run nearly as fast as his older sister, who's 3 years older, nearly to the day. And if he runs full speed ahead, he will knock his older sister over. His shoulders are broader than her. He's strong. He's built like a little tank. And I think when he's playing football with the boys, if he went on to the girls' team of the same age, God help those girls.
Yeah,
it's really unfair. And I've spoken with a lot of people in the gay community, and they are completely against this trans radical movement being pushed by the political agenda and the radical minority, because they've said it's a homophobic movement. So the trans radical group is saying to someone, if you're a lesbian, or if you don't want to have sex with me because I identify as a woman, you're not really a woman, you're not really a lesbian, you're in the wrong body. And the lesbian saying, sorry, no, you're a man. I just love women. I don't want you. And they're being narcissistic to the gay community, all narcissistic.
I think anyone who's confused, this is an absolute must read. And we are going to talk a bit about the Genspect Conference as well, because Helen Joyce was there. This is her book. And it is absolutely essential reading for anyone who's confused. And exactly as you said, the reason I picked the book up was because that's exactly what she says, is that when you think about this, like, stop and think about this. So you have the whole male, masculine, feminine. Let's just talk about that aspect of it. And again, if a boy is more feminine, that doesn't mean he's gay, by the way, because if you look at Simon Baron-Cohen's work, he's done lots of work on the male-female brain. And he just found, again, there's no hard and fast rule, but there are generalizations, and 80% of males will have what's called the male brain, which is a systemizing brain. It's much more about things and systems and how things work. And, it's like your little boy, wanting to play with trucks and cars and, things that are machines. And 20% of males actually have a much more female brain, which is called the empathizing brain. And vice versa, 80% of females, women, girls, have a female brain, and 20% have a masculine brain. So the empathizing brain is much more about people. It's about connection. It's about, why do little girls like to play with dolls and play, family and have little tea parties and all those sorts of things? Not because they're forced to do it. If you just left a little girl in a room with any kind of toy, and the same with boys, and they did these experiments, they've actually done them. You will find that if they're not, it's not about being forced. It's not about that, oh, you have to wear pink if you're a girl and you have to wear blue if you're a boy. There are things that we are just naturally attracted to. In actual fact, they even looked at newborn babies. I'm just going to talk about this bit of information because I just thought it was so fascinating. So they had newborn babies, and to the best of their ability, they didn't tell the researchers what sex the baby was. And what they did was they hung over the cots two mobiles. One was of a woman's face, a very kind of kindly woman's face. And the other one was, it looked like a face, but it was actually made up of machine parts. It had wheels and cogs, but it was kind of looked a little bit like the shape of a face. And they found that boy babies generally stared at the one that was made of machine parts, and girls' babies basically stared at the one with the face. I mean, how could that be nurture? That's got nothing to do with any social construct or any kind of pressure from outside. This is how we are wired. And yeah, people are wired differently. But again, it doesn't mean they're in the wrong body. It just, we have diversity of thought. We have neurodiversity. People's brains are absolutely wired differently. So if someone is not performing,
Sara, we talk about diversity, if I could just jump in there. So actually this trans right activist movement, is supposed to be under the cloak of diversity, is actually breaking diversity and saying, you need to think like us. If you're a feminine boy, you're in the wrong body. So it's actually
completely
the irony of the
it's totally contradictory to what they're saying. Exactly what they're saying. You're saying this is intrinsically homophobic and it is misogynistic. So you've got the homophobe, so if a girl is actually same-sex attracted, what they're saying, exactly as you're saying, what you're saying is, okay, it's not that you are you're a lesbian, but what they're saying to these girls is actually you're in the wrong body. You're actually a boy. So you need to chop your very healthy, completely nothing wrong with you, breasts off. I mean, I can't believe surgeons are doing this, but they cut their breasts off. They have this, what they call zipper chest, which is now being normalized. These little cartoons, it all looks very nice, and taking cross-sex hormones. And when we were at the Genspect Conference, we heard from a lot of the detransitioners, and those girls, when they sat on stage and they looked like girls, and then when they spoke, it was like, oh my God, their voices had broken because of the testosterone that they'd taken, and that's irreversible. And then you start hearing about all the medical impact of testosterone, osteoporosis, myocarditis, their uterus, that can atrophy, and their sexual organs can atrophy, causing enormous pain, where they then have to have everything removed. They go into early menopause. I mean, this is a dystopian nightmare, and these kids are being fooled. They're being basically told, you know what, we have a cure for you feeling uncomfortable in your body. You're in the wrong body. And we're gonna help you be in a new body. No. You're in your same body, and now you're gonna pile on a whole load of medical problems.
Yeah, and you wake up a few years later after losing your breasts or losing your penis, or a woman getting a man's voice or growing facial hair. You wake up a few years later and say, that didn't make my problems go away. Actually, I have more problems now. And the sad thing is when they're teaching the transgenderism in schools, they are nowhere in any of the teacher materials. We've looked through them all. Nowhere in those materials does it have what detransitioning or detransitioner is. It's only promoting people who have changed gender and are celebrating. They've completely whitewashed these victims, these children who were led down the wrong path. And we saw what happened in the UK with the Tavistock clinic, the gender clinic, being shut down due to the brave whistleblowers, Sue Ryan and Marcus Ryan, who we met at the conference, and the CAS report. But they're not really talking in Ireland about the Tavistock got shut down, the CAS report was damning. Here's what happens when kids have regrets, which is a huge percentage. Suicide goes up, the kids become sterile. They're whitewashed. And when I spoke with some detransitioners, and when they were on the panel, they were saying, the girl who spoke from McGill University, who wrote the paper, said the people who have detransitioned because they have grave regrets, the trans community is saying, well, you weren't really trans enough. And they're ostracizing and bullying the detransitioners, saying, you really must not have really been trans if you regret it.
Yeah.
So these poor children are getting bullied from both ends. It's really sad.
What was her name again? I'm just looking through. is it Eliza Mendgreen? Yeah, it is.
I
It's
believe.
Eliza Mendgreen. And she did a great piece on the preliminary findings from online trans, detrans communities. And it was horrific to hear how much and they what they call desisters. So they start the process and then they don't go all the way, or they've gone all the way and they realize they made a mistake and they're trying to, undo and reverse as much as physically possible. But yeah, there's horrific bullying and name calling, and there's no room for doubt. This is the thing. It's like if you're doubting, I mean, there's just such they're just zealots at the end of the day, and they've got these really fixed ideas, and they're pushing. And my question is why? Why are they doing this? Because I had a friend 20 odd years ago. He decided at 51 he was a woman trapped inside a man's body, a 6'5" man's body. We all celebrated, we all supported him, and we believed that he 100% believed he was doing the right thing. He had to go through the whole psychological processes, and he had to live as a woman before he started taking home. The old system where it was, time. They had to give him time to think about this. And he eventually went full Monty. He had his penis removed, and he had breast implants, and his Adam's apple was shaved, and he had laser treatment to remove hair, and he did the best he could to feminize, a very masculine face, actually, because he is a man. And after 12 years of living as a woman, as a trans woman, realized he'd made a horrific mistake, and detransitioned 12 years later at age 63. That was an adult, that was a grown man. And the very sad story is that his mother had lost a little girl before he was born. So one can only imagine. I mean, we don't know for certain, but just from understanding that really important piece of information, how it's more than likely his mother didn't bond with him, was grieving the loss of a child. I mean, how with mothers, I can't even for one moment imagine how you get over that. I don't think you ever get over it. You just learn to live with it. And so, unlike his older brother, who was born before the girl, he wouldn't have had the same relationship with his mother. And he even adopted the name of the little girl who had died. That's who he believed that he was her, kind of had come back into a male body. And of course, he realized that this was just not true, and it hadn't resolved his issues, and it hadn't made him any happy. In actual fact, it had destroyed his life. Now he's fine, and he's living a very quiet life and out of the public eye and everything else. He's not talking about this, but I do think that people like that, it would be good for them to speak up and to speak out, because look, we've been teenagers, we've been absolutely determined that we are right. Teenagers, their prefrontal cortex actually disconnects through adolescence. The brain is rewiring. You're flooded with hormones. You're going through these massive changes. I hated puberty. I don't think puberty is no picnic. It is not fun. But I think, who was it? It was Joe Burgo who said, puberty is what cured him. Going through puberty helped him feel better about himself.
And they're pushing puberty blockers on kids, and he said that that's suppressing the solution. If you let the body go through the natural hormones, the natural rebellion, the natural confusion, anger, all the things that we all went through with those hormones, you go through that, and that is the solution. Why would we give a drug to stop the solution? So I was on a podcast the other night, and I was asked by the host, why do you think there's such a push to do this? Why is it coming so in the curriculums, TikTok, every media outlet, pharmaceutical, everybody's pushing this like a freight train. What's the motivation? And I thought about that, and I said, well, a few things are going to happen if this gets pushed in kids' faces. One, you're going to have a group of really confused children. And at the conference, the Genspect Conference, the one thing that really stuck with me and left me feeling really sort of emotional was we deprive these children of love. So if they go down this route, it reduces their dating pool by 95% if they start to transition. Most of them will not be able to procreate and have a family, and they may not have, that loving relationship. So you deprive them of love.
They can't even have a sex life because many of them can't have an orgasm. So
that's right.
They become completely asexual. So yeah.
So you deprive someone of love and marriage and children and orgasms, and deprive them of everything, and then they deal with things like heart problems, osteoporosis, and all those other problems. So you deprive them of love, you're left with a very confused society. Suicide rates are high. They can't procreate, so population will go down. But then also, I think the quote I heard is it's over $1 million to transition a child. So sometimes when we're stuck for answers as to why are they doing this, is it about control? Because they'll be confused. The government can control this very confused population. Is it depopulation? They won't procreate. Or is it money? Follow the money trail. $1 million for every kid that's confused.
It could well be all of those. And actually, I was thinking, because obviously, you know, we knew we were doing this today, and I was kind of thinking, and I think a lot about this. I have a whole bookshelf. Another really good book is Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier. And, you know, it's teenage girls and the transgender craze. This really is, every single parent should be reading this, because especially for teenage girls. And she actually talks about, there's probably more than 3 groups, but there's 3 main groups, you know, that we need to kind of look at. One are the very small children who, from the minute they can talk, are proclaiming that they are in the wrong body. Like little boys saying, no, I'm a girl, and little girls saying, no, I'm a boy. And from Helen Joyce's book, you can see the research, and you actually see that, you know, most of those actually iron out. The problems actually disappear, again, as we've said, once they've gone through puberty and they come out the other side. And about 80% of boys who claim they're girls are actually gay. So let them be gay. What is the problem? You know, surely we're in 2023. I thought personally that we were now in societies, and especially Western societies, where being gay it was a nothing burger. Okay, so you're gay. That's like, go ahead. Like that's who you are. You know, but and as we were saying, instead it's like, no, well then if you think you're in the wrong body, if you're very feminine, then you're actually a girl. You know, and telling little boys that they're actually, you know, girls, and that the puberty blockers and everything else. And then I was thinking about, what is this really doing to children's ability to navigate the world? And one of the things, I'm obsessed with models and different theories and things like that. And one of the ones I love to use is Chloe Madanis's work, which is human needs psychology. And she talks about 6 human needs that we all have. And my internet says it's unstable. I really hope I don't drop out. If I do, just bear with me. It'll come back on. And she talks about how the first need that everybody has is certainty. So we have certainty, then it goes to uncertainty, then it's significance, then it's love and connection, then it's growth, and then it's contribution. And ideally, we should have contribution as our number 1 priority, the one where, you know, how do we make the world a better place? And that's not about being for the greater good. Like, you have to go through your own growth first. You can't just sacrifice yourself, you know. But if you think about certainty, my question is always this: what are you certain about in your life? Like, how much can you actually be certain of? Oh, it's a genuine question, actually, Jana. This is genuine. So if I was to say to you, what can you 100% be absolutely certain of? Like, it's indefatigable for you. Like, there's no way of me saying to you otherwise. What would those be?
Well, I think first, given what's happening in the world, is I can be absolutely sure I'm in the right body. I was born to be a woman. I'm absolutely sure that my children are in the right bodies, that I will love them unconditionally, that I'm certain I will always fight for my children. Everything else is really uncertain. We don't know. We can't control the weather, death, taxes, the food shortages they're going to orchestrate, which is why
we can. Well, that's not necessarily true. You know, we can't control what other people do, but we can take responsibility, and we can do those things ourselves, which, you know, the other projects that we're working on. But for me, I think if you really boil it down, it's like, if you take everything away from the outside world and you go inside, you know, what are you certain of? For me, it is, I am female. I am a mother. Like, I could say otherwise. I could call myself a banana, for God's sake. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter. The label doesn't change the biology. You know, I'm a mother because you know, 2 children babies grew inside of me, and I gave birth. And they're here, and they're physically here, that I'm breathing, that I'm alive, and that one day I will check out. That one day, you know, none of us get out of this alive. That is it. So imagine taking away, first of all, death is a completely abstract concept. It's completely far removed. Children don't understand it. You know, in terms of breathing, well, we just take it naturally. What is it? Fish, you know, notice water last. That'd be the same as us. But imagine taking away the certainty of your biological sex. Imagine saying to children, you can be whatever you like. You know, it's this, I think it's the Californian self-esteem movement. It's like we just have to build children up to just believe in themselves and to have self-esteem. And you know, we they can be what, and you know, it used to be you can be whatever you like when you grow up, as in a job. Not you can be whatever you like, as in change your biology. You know, yes, your job, and even that's not true. And that's not true. What do you mean you can be whatever you like? All right, I tell you what, I'm going to be a 6 foot, you know, size A model. That's what I'm going to be. You know,
I woke up this morning and I said, gosh, I had a bad eating week. I think I'm going to be thin today. I'm trans slender. I'm trans slender, and I'm nearly pushing 50, but you know, I feel like maybe I should be 21. I'm trans age. So, you know, those things aren't reality. You know, I'm still nearly 50 and have 2 stone to shed.
we'll talk
And
about
there's a
that.
child
We might get some interesting people on to talk about what to do when you're in your 50s or nearly. Well, I'm in my 50s, so I'm ahead of you there.
And speaking of, I can interrupt a second. There's speaking of children who feel are being pushed to be whoever they want to be, even if it's changing who they really, their authentic self. There's a child I found out this week in Selbridge at school who is identifying as a fairy. They are a fairy, not a child. And when I was on summer holiday, where I'm from in Maine last summer, I met with my friend and her 13-year-old son, and there were 2 girls in his school identifying as cats. They're not girls, they're cats. And everybody in that school is supposed to believe they're cats, they're not girls, or it's considered hateful. So the girls were meowing and hissing and crawling on their hands and knees and all sorts of things. And it went on. And the only thing eventually that stopped it is 2 things. The boys said to them, "You're girls, you're not cats." And they clawed at their faces, which wasn't kind. And then the girls started defecating around the school, pooing, and the teacher had to finally had to call the parents and say, you know, your cat girls are actually pooing, and no, we're not going to buy them litter boxes. They are not having litter boxes. They actually need to use the toilet. But that's what it's come to in Ireland. Kids identify on the stairs one day, you know, and kids will believe whatever you tell them, particularly if it's a figure of authority like a parent or a teacher.
And then you have, and I know because my younger son is having this experience at the moment, is you have the teenagers who are identifying as whatever, but the whole, so there's a couple of things. One is this is all meant to be about equality. Like you meant inclusion and equity is kind of a different word. They're like saying, well, our rights are not being, recognized, and we're not being treated the same. Yet they are being treated as if they are superior than everybody else. And there's a couple of them in his school who have consistently got other children in trouble for calling them names. These kids have been calling other people names, extremely rude names, including my son. Because he's small for his age. He has mother who's 4'11", so sorry. So they can discriminate, they can be rude, they can insult. But if anyone says anything to them, then immediately they're all called into the office. They're all questioned. My son was told that this was Garda level serious, because he had used, it wasn't even rude. It was just about calling him a weirdo. Well, I was in school. I was probably called all kinds of names. I'm sure you were too. I'm sure we had teenagers call each other names. So now it's like we have to wrap these individuals in cotton wool. They can wear whatever shoes. They can come to school pretty much dressed whatever the way they like. So now they're special. This is, I don't know. This just makes me wonder. What is going on.
I have a couple slander issues. You probably saw the papers. There was, when we did one of our events, we've done about 6 events the last few months, going around to different libraries to remove, to take out books that we feel should be in the adult section, not the children's section, not burn them or ban them, but just move.
The famous one.
So this is one, but there's 50 more. This is the one everybody thinks, oh, it's removed from the schools. Isn't that great? We won. No, there's still dozens of other books, including one that teaches children how to order hormones online. And there's pictures in the age 12 book on how to inject themselves with these hormones. So a nurse in the Natural Women's Council wrote to HIQA to say, this is in the book, this is dangerous. I'm a nurse. If kids inject themselves with this, they could be doing it wrong with a needle and really injure themselves. Not to mention the drugs you get on a .com site aren't safe. So these are all in the children's section. Where I'm going with this is, we did the event, it was at the Swords Library in County Council, and we had a counter protest there. Ours wasn't a protest. We don't protest. We do information sessions and awareness sessions.
Raising awareness.
Raising awareness. A protest is a protest. I will never say I do a protest. That's what my kids do when they want ice cream before dinner or don't want to go to bed at 7:30. We have peaceful assemblies and information sessions, etc. There was a counter group across the road. They were people before profit passing out their pastel pink and blue trans flag flyers, saying that My Natural Women's Council and the Irish Education Alliance are full of hate. They blew dog whistles, blasted music, were shouting at us, all sorts of profanities.
So kind.
When we
They're
get
so
to
kind.
Yeah, we get to the library, and this group did a human blockade at the library with their arms out, screaming at us. And I simply wanted to go in the library to see if the books had been removed from the child section and peacefully leave. They were intimidating and bullying us. So the Garda let us in, away from this mob, quietly in. We spent about 10 minutes and quietly out. John Burchill, a county councillor from Mulhuddart, raised a formal motion of complaint against the Garda, and it's recorded on the Fingal County Council meeting, the last 30 minutes actually. He was concerned that the Garda let the far-right thugs into the library, the ones spreading hate against LGBTQI community. I wasn't a thug. Don't even know what far right means these days. I was a mummy going in a library to see if there were pornography books in the children's shelves. And the whole county councillor meeting, they did not once mention the content of these sexually explicit books. The books weren't even talked about. They talked about me being a far-right thug spreading hate, and we're sending them a letter to read out at their June meeting on our views on that. And in the letter, we'll put some quotes from the book. They can read those at the meeting, and anybody in the meeting who thinks that those quotes are for age 12.
We're not going to censor ourselves. We're going to see how long we last on any platform that we're on. Why don't you just pick a little bit out of that particular book and just, share with the audience. This is aged, by the way, they consider 12-year-olds now to be young adults. This is the thing. This is a big problem as well. It's like, hang on a minute. The age of consent is 16. You're still not actually an adult till you're 18.
17 consent.
17? Oh, I thought it was maybe 16 in the UK. So 17, you're considered, you can't vote, you can't drink, you can't drive, you
can't get a tattoo.
Get a tattoo. Well, I see loads of them with them, but obviously without parent consent. You
without
can't do all of these things. But now they're referring to this age group when it comes to sex and sexuality as young adults. This is again, words matter. Like, words really, matter. And a 12-year-old is basically going to be encouraged to read this. So go for it, Jana. Let's see.
Yeah. So before I read it, I will clarify, because the media has done a spin to say, but children have an age-appropriate library card, so they can't get the books. And I said, that's exactly the point. They have an age 12 library card. These books are in age 12, so that allows them to get the books without mommy or daddy.
You're not saying to burn the books. You're not saying to
move them.
You're saying move them out of the children's section. That's it. You're just saying, look,
that's
anyone
it.
who wants to understand about what this book talks about, they're entitled to do it, but not children. This is not age group.
I'll have we'll do a little reading session here. So we did actually a reading session of many of these.
We have drag queen story time. So can we have cis woman story time?
Right. Yeah, well, I went into the GPO. This was, 2 or 3 weeks ago. We did a reading session outside Children's Books of Ireland to CEO Elena Ryan. We played her speech defending the books, and then we read it right outside her office. We went to the GPO and read the books because On Post sponsored them. We shut the GPO down for business. All the staff from the counter had to come out. The guards came and stood with us. We read for about 45 minutes, and we shut the GPO down. Of course, mainstream media didn't report that, but we read the books that were in the age 12 section. So I'll read a couple concerning pages. So one is the sexually explicit part, which talks about on page 178, doing the sex. It talks about handies. Perhaps the most important skill you will master as a gay or bi man is the timeless classic, the hand job. It talks about a good handy is all about the wrist action. Rub the head of his cock back and forth with your hand. Try different speeds and pressures until he responds positively. But do you know a bad handy is grasping a todger and shaking it like a bottle of ketchup?
What the heck?
And it goes on to talk about blowies. I'll do one more little caption for if the handies weren't enough. Blowies, oral sex is popping another dude's peen in your mouth, but watch the teeth. And as with handies and breakfast eggs, all men like their blowies served in different ways. Letting a guy come in your mouth is a safe sex no-no. Age 12. This was on the school curriculum reading list, but luckily it's been removed from that. Age 12 is too young to be learning about this.
And the author is a man who now identifies as a woman, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. And so, CEO Elaine Ryan from Children's Books Ireland was actually talking about how Juno Dawson was a teacher. She was commending Juno Dawson, the author, of being a teacher, and his books are appropriate for age 12.
Because teachers have never been ever found to abuse children or, be, grooming.
There's another one, Sara. I'll share with you. This one here is really
untouchable. Yeah.
I'll share another really, really frightening page. This one is really scary. It's on page
breakfast. Maybe they want to put the spoon down.
Yeah. 162. This isn't sexually explicit, but this one is really, really dangerous, and it hits home to a situation that actually happened in Maine where a girl was murdered. On page 162, it talks about how sex apps work. Now, sex apps on the internet are for age 18 plus, but this is in an age 12 book. On page 162, it says, upload a tiny picture of yourself to the app. I'm thinking of my little girl. The app works out your location. The app tells you who the nearest homosexuals are, so you can chat to them, and because they're near, you can meet up with them. The question I asked on the radio is, what happens if my age 12 daughter uses this dating app, marks her location, her picture, tells her who to meet. She meets a 25-year-old man who rapes her or kills her. This happened near my hometown in Maine. Someone met an adult online, an older person, and they were killed. This is teaching age 12 to do this. Who's liable? Who's liable if my
nobody in their right mind could possibly say that this is appropriate reading material for age 12 to 15 or even 12 to 17. Yeah. Teenagers by their very nature are, they don't understand risk. They don't understand consequences of their actions. They haven't lived their lives yet. This is what you're supposed to go through. They are weaponizing this. They are manipulating. They are capitalizing on this confusion and this inability for teenagers to predict outcomes and to be, and with the best will in the world. Parents are busy. They're not, look, I'm just as guilty of this. It's very hard to check your teenagers' phones to see what are they doing. What are they talking about? One of the biggest problems, I was talking to a lady the other day, and one of her clients is a female guard. And they were chatting, and she said, one of the biggest issues they are now facing on a daily basis are inappropriate images that are being shared on social media by teenagers. So and she said, she told the story of a young guy, 15, who his dad brought him into the Garda station. And they're being blackmailed, by the way, with these pictures. They're being blackmailed, they're being, forced to do things, whatever, because they've been threatened to reveal to post these pictures on there. So what happened was this supposedly a hot woman on this app basically catfished him. So she was claiming to be interested in him and everything else. Eventually, got chatting, and of course you don't know who this person is, got him to take a picture of his privates and send it to her. And whatever way they had obviously accessed started the conversation, he or she, I don't know what it was, who knows what sex the person was who was contacting him, had gained access to his phone and had access to all of his contact details. And then said, okay, great, you pay me €50 or I'm going to send this picture to everybody in your contact list. Now, luckily, this boy had the balls to say to his dad, look, I've made a mistake, and obviously had a very good relationship, very open relationship then with his parents, with his father in particular. And they went to the Gardaí, and they said, look, he's being blackmailed. And they said, well, you'll have to, this is really common. This is becoming more and more common. And you'll have to leave your phone with us for 72 hours so we can actually try and trace this person. And the son said, oh, no, I can't do without my phone. And even the father said, oh, no, he can't not have his phone. So, we are abdicating. Did I write? Yeah, abdicating our responsibility as parents way too much to technology. You know, that they can have these apps, they're on these apps, you don't know, and you can, with every effort, you can put restrictions and you can put blocks and things like that on the phone. It becomes harder and harder as the teens get older. They want more privacy. And, you know, before you know it, you just don't know what is going on behind the screen. Not even behind the closed door anymore. They could be sitting in front of you and the things could be happening, and they're scrolling on their phone and you've no idea. So there's, and I actually heard from on the radio the other day, there was the head of the Children's Rights Alliance, which is a little bit of a chill factor for me when I hear there's an organ. This is another NGO. However,
Yeah.
the woman from that NGO was talking about the dangers of pornography and how being exposed to something. So there's two things. One is being exposed to it at a very young age and how damaging and horrifying that is for children. And it's very disturbing and can be very traumatic for them to see things they're not supposed to see. And the other one was then older teens actually seeking this out. And this is the argument, isn't it, that they use? They say, oh, well, they can access this stuff on the internet anyway. What do you think of that argument, Jana? Oh, well, they can just access this pornography.
Yeah, there's two points on that. Is one, the analogy I used is that's almost like saying, well, if your child is 16 and they're going to the disco and sure they're going to do drugs anyway, give them a little line of coke at home before they go. So just because they're going to see it anyway, it doesn't mean it's okay for them to watch. But the second thing I have a concern with is they're bringing pornography into the age 12 to 15 curriculum this September. I think they've targeted the age 12 to 15 group first because they're going through puberty. They're already confused. They're going to be the most vulnerable. They'll hit senior cycle. They'll hit senior cycle 2024 and then the primary school 2025. And in the school curriculum, they're going to be teaching pornography. And one of the people leading the this kind of education initiative through active consent, she spoke on the Ray Darcy show in February 2019, is Dr. Kate Dawson from NUIG. And she was implying that there's a thing such as ethical porn, that pornography can be healthy because of the imagery. So I have no problem with pornography being on a curriculum if it is taught that you may have seen it, you may see it in the future. Pornography is not, it can be dangerous. It's led to increased crime. And as we were talking a while ago, Sara, it's like pornography is to sex as a superhero is to a normal boy. My little 4-year-old can't be jumping across buildings and skyscrapers without getting killed. Pornography isn't real sex. So I think the school curriculum they're bringing in should be more about the relationship part of sex and the dangers of pornography. But the new curriculum is highly sexually explicit. It doesn't put pornography in a bad light from the documents I've seen. And it's focusing on sex being for pleasure. As long as you consent.
It's very hedonistic. Yeah, it's all like right here, right now.
Age 12 to 15.
That's what
as
you
long
want.
as you consent,
it's whatever you want.
Have you seen this document, the WHO standards of sexuality? Anybody can look this up. I'll hold it up here. So it's the WHO standards. These here, the grids. So just everyone can look it up, please, in your own time. The WHO standards for sexuality. It's online. I tweeted it the other day. It teaches age 0 to 4 masturbation. So enjoying and pleasuring when touching one's own body. Early childhood masturbation is for age 4. It talks about for age 6 to 9. So let's get into the 6 to 9. There we go. It talks about being in love, sex in the media, enjoyment and pleasure, contraception. So I'm sorry, but why would age 6 to 9 need to learn about contraception and sexual pleasure? And when we get to 9 to 12, age 9 to 12, it's talking about consent. It's okay to have sex as long as you consent. The age of consent is 17 in Ireland. Teaching masturbation, intercourse, contraception, and pleasure for age 12, age 6, age 4. This is nothing short of creating decriminalizing pedophilia. Absolutely. This is like pedophilia here. Yeah. It's in the WHO.
You know, there's a reason why we have had laws in place in terms of the age of consent. There's a reason why, you know, we have been, and the safeguarding of children is being it's not even just being dismantled. There is a wrecking ball coming in and literally destroying every line of defense around children, from pedophilic pedophiles, from groomers, from people who see children as a plaything, who don't see children as being children. They see them as little adults that they can, you know, that they can consent, that they can, you know, and I've, as a someone who's worked with thousands of clients, I've had a lot of people, way more than I ever wanted to, who end up talking about how they were sexually abused as a child. And the sexual abuse ranged from, you know, being touched inappropriately, and that stuck with some, you know, these people, it stuck with them, or being someone exposing themselves to them, you know, when they were 8, and a priest or a guard, or, you know, someone in authority, quite often exposing themselves, or a relative, right up to one of the most horrific ones I ever had was when she was 3, and she stayed with her grandparents. Her grandmother would put her into the bed with her grandfather, who she knew would then sexually abuse her. So from the age of 3, she was sexually abused by her grandfather, and she, you know, compartmentalized. She pushed it down, but by the time she came to see me, she had children of her own, and this was really coming back to haunt her in a massive way, and it never leaves people. So there are reasons why we have, you know, safeguards in place, and I am really appealing to every principal, to every teacher, to not allow this into their schools, to refuse point blank to teach this material, to have it put in children's hands. What's that you've got outlined there, Jana?
This here is what the Irish people voted on in 2015. It's called the Child First Act of 2015. And I feel like it's on the TUSLA website. It's our law to protect children, but they might as well shred it up, because when we have gone into the Garda to file with these books being sexually explicit, we have provided the Garda Síochána in Ireland, and we have loads of pulse numbers quoting the Child First Act, that showing sexually explicit material to children is often a feature of the grooming process by perpetrators. We have showed them that emotional abuse is seriously inappropriate expectations of a child relative to his or her age. This is in the law in Ireland, the Child First Act that we voted on here. The Garda has, it's a civil matter, not criminal. TUSLA, it's on their website, doesn't want to know about it. Children's Ombudsman doesn't want to know about it.
All of these NGOs, we are being governed by NGOs by the looks of it here in this country. You know, we have
€6 billion a year, isn't it?
Penny, there's like, what is it? 3,600 NGOs or 36,000 NGOs? I think it's 36,000 NGOs.
No, 36,000, and it's 6 billion a year of our tax money. So they're using our tax money to abuse children.
So they're circumventing, so they're NGOs, which means non-governmental organizations, but they're funded by the government. So they don't lie underneath, you know, the fact that they are being controlled by people who we barely elected. I mean, people in power are barely elected officials. So they don't need to kind of, it's like they don't need to answer to the people, but yet they are actually dictating huge amounts. And even the National Women's Council of Ireland has a trans-identified man on the board. This is
I contacted them.
It is an insult.
I contacted them about that last year. Yeah.
Sorry, Jana.
I contacted them last year when I was campaigning against the erasure of women, and I sent them an email and said, what's your stance on what are you doing to stop the erasure of women? And I got a reply back, oh, women aren't being erased. And I sent them Article 10, 11, and 12 and said, woman and mother are being erased. And then they backpedaled, and they believe on their website, they use pronouns. They believe in the erasure of woman and mother. And this is the National Women's Council of Ireland. Roderick O'Gorman paid them over €1 million of our tax money. This is the largest women organization in Ireland. They got €1 million, and they do not advocate for the women and girls in this country, which is what inspired me to launch the Natural Women's Council. We don't get any funding. We don't get any government money, but we've done a lot of campaigning. The campaigns are live on the Natural Women's Council Telegram. People can follow me on Twitter, JKLUNDEN. I will set up another Twitter soon for the council. All Parents and Parents Rights Alliance. They all have websites and Twitters and Telegrams. All the campaigns are there. I plea for all parents to send the opt-out letter to their school so their kids do not go through this indoctrinating education, which is coming out in September this year for 12-year-olds. I plead to every principal to opt the school out and say we're not teaching it. And I plead for everyone to send those letters.
We have to safeguard children. We have to protect their child. Children get one shot at childhood. That's it, one shot. You do anything in that childhood, in that child's childhood, to derail it, there's no coming back from this. There's no coming back from this. I just want to I kind of started the sentence, I never finished it. But Abigail Schreier, she did a great interview with Jordan Peterson. And there's a really good speech that she gave at a university in America as well. And she was saying there's basically three groups. There's the little boys and girls who, the minute they can speak, are telling people that they're boys or girls. They're the opposite of what they are. And, you know, they are a very, very tiny percentage of the population. This is not, you know, nothing's been imposed upon them. They're just coming out with this for multiple reasons, again, and it may not be biological. I know there was one story of a little boy who was insisting he was a girl. And actually it transpired that he had a little sister was born, little baby. They were very close together in age. And of course, as naturally happens, the baby was getting more attention than him. And he just thought, well, I have to, for me to get that attention back, I have to be a girl. Because he was asked the right questions. This is the thing. It's not affirming. You're not going to affirm somebody. You're going to ask them, well, how do they get to this conclusion? And what are they looking for? You're going to ask them better questions. Then you have a second group, which is the really worrying one. And this is where the story really kind of is about, are teenage girls. And they have this ROGD, rapid onset gender dysphoria. Rapid onset. So they had no signs of this beforehand. They seem perfectly happy, healthy girls, perfectly happy to be girls. And then something happens, whether they're in school or even in university, and suddenly they're now identifying as the opposite sex. And they are seeing this as a social contagion issue. And girls, teenage girls, are renowned for social contagion. You know, I went to boarding school. It was all girls. All of our periods regulated together. We all started menstruating at the same time. Something happens with girls, our energy, the way we communicate. We're much more like a tribe together. These things happen. And so this isn't about genuine gender dysphoria. This is about believing something because other people are believing it and being so empathetic for your girlfriends, etc. And then she talked about probably the most dangerous group are the trans activists, the trans rights activists, these TRAs, who many of whom are not actually trans identified themselves. They don't identify themselves as being in the wrong body, but they are pushing for this. And that's where you have these NGOs. That's where you have people on the street throwing buckets of water over you because you're simply wanting to make parents aware of what is happening in schools and libraries. And we have to ask ourselves this question, what are they getting from this? You know, why are they doing what they're doing? And I suppose until we talk to one of them, you know, we're not really going to know. So we've run over our hour. We said we would try and keep this to an hour, but I think we could probably talk for about a week on this one particular thing. So
we'll wait till next week. We'll do part 2.
So we're gonna do a series on this, but I think in the meantime there is a few websites that really can give you loads of really great information. So obviously genspect.org is amazing, and this was the conference, the 3-day conference in Killarney called The Bigger Picture. So Stella O'Malley she's the founder. Helen Joyce was speaking. Maya Forstater, who, you know, the whole court case in the UK. I mean, it was just incredible. They even had Ken Zucker, who has been really attacked. He had one of the first gender clinics, and Issel White. I mean, you name it. It was just an incredible 3 days. It was very dark, though, wasn't it? Like we kind of came away a little bit. It took me a while to bring myself back.
Sex Matters is a good website too. Sex Matters is a really good website.
It's an excellent website. So Helen Joyce and Stella O'Malley, I think, Helen Joyce, I think, is with that. Also, you have the Countess here in Ireland. This is a really interesting organization because it's about the legal aspect. So these are barristers and lawyers looking into what is happening on the legislation. So they gave some really great pamphlets. Who else can we recommend that people go and you know, start investigating to find out more?
For asserting the rights of parents is the IrishEducationAlliance.com, with all the campaigns we've done about the ladies Gaelic football, the opt out for the curriculum. All of those are on that site, and also we will be putting up information on the Parents' Rights Alliance site. Another thing is, I want to thank everyone. We did a flyer, a cry for help to get some flyer money and to get a few thousand flyers printed. In one day, I have 1,500 euros raised in just one day of people who say, thank you, go get flyers. So I'm going to get about 20,000 flyers printed. There are still parents and teachers. We're going to go to the school gates. We're going to get these flyers printed and show up at the school gates and let every parent know this is happening, because many that I talk to still don't know this is coming. They don't know their kid's going to be taught they can be neither, both, male, female. And we need to get the awareness out, because parents are the primary educators of children, not the Department of Education or O'Gorman.
We are the last bastions of defense for our children, and we need help from principals. We want to have principled principals who actually look at this material and really look at the children in their schools, their teens, who they are in loco parentis, essentially, like we send them in with good faith that they will be cared for, looked after, and kept safe. I mean, you have big fences around the schools now. You can't just walk into any school here in Ireland. You've got to ring the bell. You've got to make an appointment, so we can't just walk in. But this is being delivered. This is a Trojan horse. This is absolutely a Trojan horse. And people need to wake up to this fact and start pushing back and start saying, no, we know it's difficult, but if you can keep your child out of school on the day that this is being taught, refuse to allow your child to have this on their books, when you rent them or you buy them. I just refuse to buy them. I mean, let's do whatever we can here. If you have to kind of team up with other parents to keep kids out, and you swap, on the weeks and everything else. One of the issues, though, is kind of genders being kind of like, it's peppered everywhere. Even in mathematics, I saw something and I was like, what is it doing in maths? Like, why is this being shoved into every little nook and cranny and in their faces, whatever way they possibly can? There's also a couple of other organizations. There's the Irish Council for Human Rights. I know they have a very good presentation, which is the legislation and how it has systematically removed parents as being main stakeholders actually in children's lives in education. So that's a really, really good one. And also Lawyers for Justice have done loads of great work as well, haven't they?
Yes, and the government is trying to strip parental rights, and we've seen what's happened in the US, schools giving children chest binders, which are very dangerous, and socially transitioning children at school, but not telling the parents.
Yeah.
That will come here, and if you question it, it's hate speech. And if this goes through the gender equality, hate speech, you disagree with your child socially transitioning, they'll try to take your kids off you.
Well, I know they've done that in Canada. I know this is already happening over there. Children are being taken off their parents who are not affirming their gender. I think the example, the analogy, or the kind of the parallel that we always use is like, okay, so this is exactly the same as someone who's anorexic going in to see a therapist and saying, I'm fat, and they weigh, 50 kilos. And the therapist is having to affirm their anorexia. So they affirm their fatness. Sorry, they have to affirm their fatness. And they go, yes, you are fat. And they go, I want to have a gastric band. And they have to, by law, then go and say, yes, absolutely, you are fat, you are overweight, and yes, you do. We are going to affirm your fatness. So this is where trans fats maybe, is a different, it means something different. But it is bonkers. It is bonkers. And no one can convince me otherwise. Somebody, an adult, who wants to dress as the opposite sex, who wants to have bits of their body chopped off, who wants to take cross-sex hormones, if they really genuinely believe it's going to make them happy, and there are some people who out there who I'm sure it has, they are entitled to do that. They are adults. They can go and do that. They're not entitled to make other people believe their fantasy. It's this craziness of they cannot accept themselves for who they are in the body they're born in, but they want everyone else to accept who they are now pretending to be, who they are claiming, and the self-identification. It was very damaging, and the fact that it came in here so early shows that really Ireland is absolutely a testing ground for this. They are seeing how far they can push it.
And if you don't agree with it, you will lose your job. You will get fined. The guards can show up at your house and ask for the password to your phone if this hate speech goes through, and you can go to jail if you don't buy into their fantasy.
So, you know,
The
ordinary
boy was
people,
expelled from school.
boys expelled from school for saying, and I know that's happened in the UK as well. You know, and I actually heard, well, I didn't hear, I read it because it was in actually one of the mainstream papers, which was that the child at the center of the Enoch Burke situation, their parents did not know that that was the child that this was around. How did the parents not know this? Is this child, our children, the children are being socially transitioned in school. I mean, that you were on the radio show and there was a guy called Steve who is a climbing instructor, climbing wall instructor. So he's not
And
a
he works
therapist, he's not a
with
social.
Stand Up. I think Stand Up is his agency, and he goes into the schools.
And under the guise of kindness, inclusion, tolerance, all these lovely fluffy words, is actually going in as a gay man without no children of his own and talking to teenagers as if he is an expert. He is no expert. He is not a therapist, and talking about these things as if they are fact. That this is fact that you can change your sex. You cannot.
And do you know what he said to me?
If I get locked up, if I get locked up for that, so be it.
Do you know what he said to me when I questioned him on it? He said, if parents don't like what I'm teaching their children, keep them home that day. That's what he said.
This is a gay
keep
man
my
with
children
no children.
home.
But he's a gay man. He's living as a gay man. Why is he talking about trans? You know, this thing. This whole thing is like, this is totally and utterly bonkers, and it's all totally contradictory to what they are talking about. They're talking about everyone.
What a complete narcissist, Sara, to say if parents don't like it, you take a day off work and get unpaid leave from your job to keep them home because I'm going in to talk at the school whether you like it or not.
I do remember you asked him, does he have children? Because gay people, you know, can have children.
He said he couldn't afford kids yet. He has to save up money to get a child, which is
children.
fine.
So he has access to other people's children as a completely unqualified person to talk about this. But yet, you know, and he actually changed the child's name on the register. Now, how did he have access to that register? This is a massive breach of GDPR, and massive breach of GDPR. And these kids who are confused. Listen, you know, imagine you're a teenager and you're a bit awkward and you don't fit in anywhere, which happens. You know, I've gone through phases where I didn't know who I was and where I fitted in as a teenager. You know,
who doesn't?
Suddenly you have a new family. And I think one of the most insidious terms I've heard is glitter family. You can join your glitter family, the rainbow underneath the rainbow. That if your biological parents who've, you know, given birth to you, mother's given birth to you, raised you, looked after you, love you, if they don't gender affirm you, then you can go no contact. And there are people on the internet who are teaching children through social media how to go no contact with their parents, to do this in secret, to order things online, to join those dating apps, those sex apps. I mean, the world is insane, and we have to be the adults in the room. Everyone has to grow up and has to realize this is happening. We have to acknowledge that this is happening first. It's horrendous to acknowledge it. Not easy. I know we came away from the Genspect Conference gobsmacked at how dark this world is, that when these children go in, these vulnerable children, they're either gay or they're on the spectrum, or they have trauma, very complex trauma issues. They have anorexia, they have all kinds of body issues. All of they're vulnerable, they are genuine, and they are being preyed upon. They are being preyed upon by these parasites and these people who just want to take advantage, and it's disgusting.
And if we didn't put it under the kindness umbrella, and this is just say about something else other than the trans, and you said, you know, you're being pushed to do this, and don't talk to your parents and come to our family, it would be a cult. And remember the lady Colette, who's the academic, spoke, and she did the parallels between the trans movement and religion, and it was very parallel. And I'd like to say it's even more than a religion, it's becoming like a cult.
Well, you're not allowed, at least in a religion, you can have some sort of debate. Most people who are religious, you know, they have deep faith, but they're very calm about it. They don't go around. I'm just looking for her name, actually. Where's her name? Where is she? She's on. I know she's on Twitter. I followed her for a long time. She's
brilliant.
Very...
Colette?
Colette, yes, but I can't think of what her surname is. I can't.
While you're looking for that, Sara, maybe for our next Wonder Woman, we actually have someone who does agree this should be pushed on kids and invite them on for debate.
Well, if anyone out there is watching this and believes totally that this material should be in front of 12 to 15-year-olds and younger, because as you said, it's, you know, we have Busybodies, which is a HSE pamphlet that's being pushed in primary schools. And again, it talks about gender. And yeah, I'm more than happy to have someone come in and talk about why do they believe this to be true? Why do they believe that this is the case? Because, you know, one thing I've noticed is I don't see any of that. What I just see is name calling, you know, insults, shut down of debate, just trying to just silence you, whether it's through noise, whether it's through, you know, could be all kinds of things. So yeah,
physical assaults. Last week I had a physical assault. Why don't we invite Paul Murphy? He's called us far right bigots a good few times, and I believe he has a baby. He has a baby.
It's not a baby. It's not a baby. It's a baby. Baby.
Because apparently he thought it wasn't right to call the child a boy or a girl. It was born. It's going to be baby it until the baby decides what it wants to be.
Yeah, they call them babies. So it's not
a baby.
It's a baby. I mean, this is child abuse. We need certainty. We have very little thing. There's very few things in life that you can be certain of. And understanding your biological sex and going from that point of view is so crucial for children's foundation. They can, in their minds, they can obviously have a male or a female brain. Absolutely. They can be same-sex attracted or bisexual or whatever. That's, of course, that's absolutely there. But to actually cause irreversible harm and damage, you know, this is unacceptable. You cannot glue parts of the body back on once they have been removed. You cannot undo a broken voice, osteoporosis, myocarditis, those sorts of issues, you know, and lots of trans identified males who are going on to estrogen are also now, you know, suffering from, more of them are suffering from things like breast cancer. You know, there are medical reasons, strong medical reasons and evidence. And I just want to finish on one thing, which is that what was really great about Helen Joyce's book, Trans, is that she really lifts the lid with the data, with the evidence that shows that there is no evidence that if you do not gender affirm your child or your teenager, that they're going to kill themselves. There is no evidence. And this is the cruel, wicked argument that is used, that if you don't do this, these children are going. Now, what they have found is most of their children already had mental health issues. They probably had suicide attempts beforehand. And actually, the evidence is much more that once they go through this, because of their medical problems, suicide rates are very high amongst transitioners and detransitioners who recognize that they made a huge mistake. So I think we
should get someone who's going through the detransition onto one of our Wonder Woman.
Well, we did ask a few of them, and they did. Yeah, they said yes. So I think that'd be great. I think from now on we're going to have some guests on who can speak to our topics. But we wanted to say hello to the world, introduce our new podcast. So Wonder Women, we are women who wonder about what the hell is going on in the world. How is the world so bonkers, so crazy? And hopefully try to disentangle some of the information out there. So yeah, any last words, Jana, before we sign off?
Yeah, I think we should develop as well a platform or a mechanism where people can send us some ideas for topics of what they want to talk about, and we can get the public view and bring some topics on.
I'm sure we'll be inundated. I'm sure we'll be inundated. But just for the next little while, we're going to do a whole series on the whole gender ideology. It's such a huge subject. It's such a massive issue. And I don't think we can do enough to raise awareness. And so all of those other groups, they're doing amazing work as well. You know, we're just adding our voice into the conversation, you know, as mothers, as women. And we're encouraging everyone else to start wondering as well. You know, start to wonder, you know, where did this come from? What is the ultimate aim? You know, who's benefiting from this? Because I can tell you now, it's not the kids, it's not the teens. You know, they are going to be collateral damage in this. And, you know, we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to sit back and let them get away with it. So, Jana, until next time, we need like a pow.
Wonder.
Oh, pow. You know, with Wonder Woman's kind of fight.
Should we get some costumes next time? We'll get a Wonder Woman costume next time. We'll go to some.
I don't think I can
fancy...
fit into my Wonder Woman boob tube. I don't think that's necessary. Well, maybe
we get a good audience with that. You never know.
For the wrong reasons. Jana, until next time.
Next time.